Good morning, Clearbranch kids. I hope you guys have had a wonderful October. I know that I have loved talking to you about learning to have grit, learning to refuse to give up even when life gets tough, and how God can help us to do that. So last week we heard more of Moses' story and where we left off through Moses speaking to Pharaoh with God's help, and then God continuing to send plagues to the Egyptians. Pharaoh finally agreed to let the Israelites go. So they took off, and of course, they weren't moving very fast because there were tons of people and animals and things. And so as they traveled across the desert, they weren't making great time, but they were escaping to freedom. And God led them two ways: during the day by a pillar of clouds, and at night by a pillar of fire. But while they were moving on, something else was happening. Pharaoh, back in Egypt, has realized that he has lost all of his workers, and he is having major regret about the decision that he made to let the Israelites go. And so he sends a group, his army, out to chase them. So after a while, the Israelites can hear them coming because all of their horses and everything are making tons of noise, and they continue to move on as quickly as they can. Meanwhile, the Egyptian army is catching up with them. Well, everything's okay for a while until they get to the Red Sea. And how are they going to get across this with all of these people and animals and children and all of their things and possibly escape an actual army? And so the people cried out to God, and then God spoke to Moses, and he said, I want you, when I tell you it's time, to extend your staff, your walking stick, out over the Red Sea. And so as they stayed there overnight, and God gave Moses instructions, he also kept up a wall of clouds so that the Egyptians couldn't see what was going on. And when the time was right, God instructed Moses to extend his staff out over the Red Sea, and God sent a huge wind and parted the waters. And then the Israelites began their path across the Red Sea with the waters parted so that they could walk across on dry land. Well, that was great, and they were making their time across, but then the Egyptians caught up with them, and they start coming across the Red Sea as well. But when the last of the Israelites had crossed over to dry land, God told Moses to extend his staff once again, and when he did, the waters fell back into place in the Red Sea, right on top of the entire Egyptian army. After this had happened and they had made it safely to the other side, the Israelites rejoiced because they could see now what they couldn't see in the beginning. And that's something that we need to all remember as well. And that's our bottom line for this week, is that we can hold on because no matter what happens, God is still and always in control.